Are we live?
We're live.
Cool. Welcome everyone to our Lunch and Learn from F10. My name is Marc, and it's my great pleasure to host you here in person in our new offices where we moved in mid-September last year, but also obviously everyone online. Great to have you. Becks, maybe can you go on mute until it seems to create some noise? Sorry. Exactly. And I welcome you to the Metaverse Special. So we'll really dive into the Metaverse today, look at what is it all about, what can we see. We also tried to give you a glimpse on how it today looks like. And with that, I would like to also welcome Becks. She is joining us from, I think, London today. She is really an expert on NFTs and makes sure that more and more people hear about NFTs, what are the use cases, what is coming with it, and we'll dive into much more details in a lunch chat, a remote lunch chat. And before we go there, I will give a quick introduction, maybe about myself, but then also to just set the scene. What is the Metaverse? What can we expect? What are people talking about? Obviously, the idea is that you have a lot of questions, take note, or ask them also in between. Online, please just add them into the chat. Joel will make sure and ping me when there is something urgent that we need to address. And here, please speak up and speak loud, or we get you closer to a mic, or I will just repeat the question for the people online. Right, maybe about myself, right? So as mentioned, Marc Hauser is my name. I'm running F10 Europe, so responsible for everything in Switzerland, but also in Spain, and also our current endeavors in the Nordics. F10, I don't know who doesn't know F10 by now, hopefully everyone. For those who don't, in one sentence, F10 really is a global ecosystem where we focus on innovation in the financial services industry. We work together with startups, early stage, later stage, with corporate partners, financial services, big banks, big insurance companies, and investors, as well as many mentors. I see also a few mentors around today. So it's great to have you here and glad you could make it. So in terms of background, I had 2 startups myself, worked at UBS for a while and also in Roland Berger, where I was doing strategy consulting. But also now, and I was just thinking before, normally I just have one picture on the left, but I think in the age of Metaverse, and especially also with the topic, our identities in different environments will actually change, and we will have multiple identities depending where we are. Maybe if we hang out with our friends, we'll have a different identity versus when we go to a corporate event, even if that event is in the Metaverse. So you will see this one guy here at the bottom a bit later, live from Decentraland, if technology works. Hopefully everything is cool. And also this one, for example, is the one that I use on Discord. Right, so we will really see this, and we'll dive into this also with Becks a little bit later. What does it mean with those identities? But before we go there, what is the Metaverse? And, it's not working. Cool. So with everything new, and I tried to get to a easy definition, but with everything new, I think initially it's not one answer. It's not everyone agrees on definition what the Metaverse is. But I think we have a few words that come again and again in all definitions. One is the notion of the next iteration of the internet, so Web3, right? So everything, we had Web 1, where we were pretty much just going there, finding stuff, reading. Then Web 2 with Facebook, with the social interaction, where we also create content. And now with Web 3, we really own the content and can even monetize it. Right? In the old days, Facebook made all the money and all the network effects. Basically, they benefited it, but not so much the single users coming in and actually making Facebook big. Another one is 3D worlds. So let's have a typo, but yes, everything seems to be three-dimensional at the moment, but it doesn't mean that the Metaverse needs to be three-dimensional. It's very much social. It's about the community. It's about being together as a group, and we'll dive into this as well with Becks a little bit later. It's about real time, so it's not a video or a playback movie that obviously also is three-dimensional, but it's about real time, it's about interaction, and it's also the sense of presence. So if who of you, maybe just quick hands up, had a VR experience so far? Okay, cool. Hence more and more. Who of you was in an open metaverse? So not the Facebook world, but really a blockchain-based metaverse. Cool. So you will get some glimpse as well on where this is going. And this is maybe just a good iteration, right? We have the centralized, closed metaverse, where obviously the big tech companies are throwing billions at. We talk about Meta, formerly Facebook, Microsoft, Google, many others. They put really billions into the topic. And on the decentral side, we talk about Sandbox, we talk about the Decentraland. Decentraland today we will also visit. And what are the characteristics, especially also of the decentralized, so of the open metaverse? We're talking about boundless, right? So it's really, you can have as many people as you want. Today, they will cut it and you're on different servers. So if it's too many people in one space, you will not see everyone. But that's also why you need to like if you go with friends, you make sure you're on the same server. So you really meet there. It's persistent. You can't just unplug it. It's basically distributed across millions of different computers, networks globally. So it's really persistent and it's just around. It's decentral. So it's owned by the users. So for example, Decentraland, the users own the land, the users own the things on the land, and they also own what they wear, right? It's very much immersive, meaning that you dive into with a VR experience, AR experience, so augmented reality, or also just in front of a screen. But the idea is that you dive into it. We will also see currently already starting, it's a whole new economy. So there will be and already are virtual economies that are built in the metaverse. So basically in Decentraland, there's their own economy running on, for example, Mana mainly, right? It's their own token. So this will happen, right? And also DeFi elements, renting, everything that we know from this economy will also be there in the virtual economy and in the metaverse. And we touched on it already before. It's very much a social experience. Everything is about the community coming together, being together, interacting way more than maybe we know it from previous games where it's maybe a few friends who come together, but it wasn't this massive community, sense of community. Here I just put a few quotes out, and if you haven't seen it, recent also CT report, I mean, there's every bank, every major company is now publishing a report, but this one is a really extensive one, 184 pages. And also here we see the notion, it's like metaverse is not a destination really, but it's a point in time, and that point in time where people value digital assets more than physical assets. And when I talk to friends who have kids in between 8 and 14 years old, they don't want the latest sneakers to run around in the breaks at school, but they want the latest suit. They maybe want to spend money on digital elements. And we already see studies that in the US, kids actually put the value of their digital virtual identity higher than their physical identity. It started a bit with Instagram, with the numbers of likes, obviously now with TikTok, how many likes do you get, shares, is it really, how many views do you get? And now it's obviously also transferred into the metaverse, and how do I look there? Then how Mark Zuckerberg puts it, it's instead of just viewing content, you're really in it, right? We can see the next generation also potentially of movies, you're part of the movie. You're part of the action and not just passive sitting there, but really emerging and running around maybe with the characters, right? And experiencing, maybe still as a watching person, but at least you're in it. And also from Outlier Ventures, they are very much immersing into everything Web3, Metaverse. They see it as an interface layer between the physical and the virtual worlds. So this is everything, the technology, the software, the hardware that is being built there. I would like to give you a few examples of the metaverse, what's happening. So this is currently the look of Decentraland. It has, as in real life, a limited amount of land. I get the question a lot, okay, couldn't it be happening that the number of land parcels would be extended? And the answer is yes. But because Decentraland is owned by the users through a DAO, through a decentralized autonomous organization, the majority of those people owning lands today or owning the coin today would actually need to say yes to this proposal, right? So if it makes sense, they would say yes, otherwise not. So this will kind of making it, when it makes sense, they will increase the number of land. If not, not. And we see a lot of brands setting up shop there. Also, JP Morgan now set up land as well in the metaverse. So this is example one. Then example two, which is a bit more pixeled, right? A bit more like Roblox from a design perspective, is Sandbox. Also here, same picture, a lot of brands coming in, joining the show. Hi there, welcome. Yeah, please find a space, perfect. And the latest one that maybe we managed to get the movie as well is of the Beluga Labs, right? And they just announced, basically with a trailer video, their metaverse. And Beluga Labs, I think by now everyone knows them best for their Bored Apes, the Mutant Apes, now ApeCoin. We bought a lot of other projects as well, and really built this powerhouse in the metaverse and in that scene. Let's see if we can play it. Oh, no. Okay, we don't seem to get the audio across. No, right? Yes, shared, yeah. So that's the latest. For that online, I hope it works. Cool. So far as a broad, quick introduction on Metaverse, so we have open, we have closed. Open is very much decentralized. You own everything you wear, you see, you will experience as well. And what is the origin, right? Looking back a little bit, what they put as the origin, many people, is Snow Crash, and the novel written in 1992 by Stevenson at the time, coining basically the term. Right? There were references and talking about the ideas already before, but that's really where everyone basically references back. And the other thing that people reference to a lot is Ready Player One. Who has seen the movie Ready Player One? Okay, few. I mean, if you want to immerse a little bit, it's the cool one to look at. And just to give a glimpse, so basically they have quite a doomy reality. So the reality is very dark and poor and not really a cool place to be. And then there is this other side, what they call the oasis, where people go and actually have fun, meet people, can be who they want to be, right? You can dress up, you can look exactly what you want to look like. And I think this is exactly what we also see with the metaverse now. People don't just replicate who they are in real life, but have total freedom and totally go crazy. Another example, obviously we can't not mention is Second Life. They started in 2003, and still, even though it's kind of disappeared in the public domain. We don't hear so much about, but they still have 1 million users, active users. I think that's monthly active users. I don't know today. So they are still they paved a lot of the way as well technologically. Perfect. With that introduction, I want to maybe quickly add any questions that are pressing. Sure, is anything online? I'm not sure. Not yet. Perfect. Do we have any pressing questions? Otherwise, we would dive into the lunch chat with Becks. No pressing questions? Okay, cool. So it's my pleasure, Becks, to have you today with us, joining us, as mentioned, from London. Yeah, I hear you're unmuted. Perfect. And also, obviously, you have this digital identity, but also your real identity. You're on the Nifty World YouTube channel. Here we can see your real identity, right? But also, obviously, even in LinkedIn, everywhere you are the pink-haired lady. And then you also own a mutant ape that has you showing off a little bit. I would like to stop the presentation here and see if we can see ourselves a bit better. Perfect. Becks, before we get started and into the detailed questions, I would like to give you the floor and just talk a little bit about your story, what brought you into the space. Yeah, where do you give us some background?
Okay, well, hello everyone. Thank you very much for having me, and thanks for joining this Lunch and Learn today, Marc. You've done an amazing job introducing us all to, the world of the metaverse. I think you've put it brilliantly. For anyone who isn't aware, I'm Becks. I am the founder of Nifty World NFT. Sorry, you couldn't go on mute for a second. I'm getting feedback and hearing myself in double. Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I'm founder of Nifty World NFT. So we are a trusted educational platform and also a consultancy and future metaverse media agency. So basically we encompass a lot of different things, and we essentially work towards making NFTs, the metaverse, Web3 easy for everyone to understand. And I do that in a way which really stems from my 10 years or more as a broadcaster here in the UK, and applying that skills that I've brought up working for the BBC, for Sky, for ITV, a number of different radio channels, and realizing that technology and this particular tech and industry is somewhere that I really want to be in my future career. So as I started in this space, I started, funnily enough, by throughout the pandemic, I started by investing in stocks and shares, and found that was quite a siloed industry to be in. Didn't really realize what I was doing, how I could really make the money, but I wanted to have a bit of a side hustle whilst the pandemic was going on, and broadcasting wasn't really what we expected it to be. I then moved on to cryptocurrency and taught myself candlestick graphs and things like that. But again, found it really, really siloed. I didn't have many people to speak to, apart from going on to Clubhouse and listening to stocks and shares and crypto rooms, but not really being able to get involved. And then I started investing in art, physical art. And I read an article in a British newspaper called the Sunday Times about NFTs and what this future might be. And this was back in March 2021, so just over a year ago now. And it piqued my interest. And I basically started spending the next couple of months really immersing myself in NFTs and trying to understand what this is, and really getting involved in the community, which is one of the biggest things that you need to know about NFTs, and is that community is king, really. And from that point onwards, I realized that I could create my digital twin in this space. And I think that's really important when it comes to the metaverse, talking about a digital twin and taking your skills from your in real life world and moving it across to this digital space. Now, it isn't dramatically different. I essentially create content around NFTs, the metaverse, Web3, but it is paving the way for the future as that becomes more immersive. The technology that I will use to create that content will become more Web3 focused. But for me, as a woman in the space, apparently I got told at a conference in the last couple of weeks that I was the first female YouTuber about NFTs, which is quite something I didn't realize and was quite amazing. But I have really wanted to pave the way a little bit more for women feeling more comfortable taking ownership in NFTs and the metaverse and feeling confident in this space by putting a friendly face to it. And I have no problems in doxing myself, which is showing who you are, as well as obviously having the different avatars like my Boss Beauties and my mutant ape that I use on LinkedIn and Twitter. But I believe that it's a space where real inclusivity, real community, and real opportunity is absolutely key for a lot of us. And NFTs are this, or were the starting point for me. They're the access token that will allow you to move into the metaverse and essentially be your tickets for a number of different things within the metaverse. And the way the metaverse is going to expand is that it's going to become something that we will be treating like our right arm. It will be an everyday part of our life. And this isn't going to be necessarily something this year or next year, but it's certainly going to be something in the next 5, 10, 15 years before the next 20 years when it looks a bit more like Ready Player One, hopefully without the dystopian real life. But it's a really exciting time. We're all very, very early in this space. And I think if you guys are here listening and enjoying the conversation today, please digest it and please take it seriously, because the opportunity that is here for each and every one of us for being this early, if you can really wrap your head around this, is that you can create a real opportunity for yourself, your business, your brands, your careers within this space that I think we won't have been able to have ownership of previously. So I hope that gives you a nice little introduction to me.
Thank you very much. And sorry, maybe you need to mute. Yeah, perfectly. You just saw that you don't get the echo. Sorry for that. Yes, you already touched on many super interesting elements, and I think everyone's story into crypto and then NFTs basically starts with and normally people can remember, right? So what brought them in, what kept them in. And I liked that how you said, like, your journey actually, you stuck with the community, and I couldn't agree more, right? Especially on not Ethereum chains. If you are around there, then it's a very small number of people being active, and with that a lot of exchange really happens, and you get to amazing high quality people and chat with them you would normally never have access, just because, as you mentioned, we are still very, very, very early. Also, you touched already on the skills and how to go there in the future. I would actually want to park this one and then talk about later also what roles will happen, like what will we see in terms of jobs, right? What will we be doing? What will our kids be doing in the metaverse, right? I always, like 5-10 years ago, I always thought that my daughter or my kids in the end will be, for example, something like space gendarmerie, like police, like what's a police? Yeah, the police, like space police, right? But now it seems to not go into space really, but maybe just into the virtual reality. And I think that's also again a sign at how bad we are at predicting the future. What I would love to do now, Becks, is actually go into Decentraland, and maybe Lucas, if you could share us being there. You should be seeing us now on Decentraland. Perfect. Exactly. So what we created here is an F10 space in the Decentraland. So Decentraland is the one of the two big currently, I would say, open metaverses out there, quite well established, 90,000 different parcels out there. And what do we see now? Yeah, Lucas, maybe you just join us on the stage here. So you can see we are standing here. We didn't invite people to come here, but rather have wanted to just show it. But also, obviously, afterwards, if you want to walk around here, you will be free to do so, obviously. I think while we stand here in the metaverse and maybe do some of these gestures that are available, in the metaverse currently is still very limited. So I can, for example, jump around, put the hands in the air, and it's very much, you can see it's still coming a lot is from gaming. I would also say a lot is inherited from the gaming space. You will see a lot of also like this thing here, like you wouldn't see that normally if it wasn't from gamers, right? So everything really comes from that notion that you play, and also many the successful metaverses actually touch on the aspect of gaming. Becks, I would like to come maybe with the second part, dive into the metaverse and also your view on the metaverse. Like, how do you define the metaverse?
Well, I'll go back to the point of it being your digital twin, and an opportunity to kind of, well, as you mentioned before with Ready Player One, you can go into an immersive space where you can be anything you want to be, which is quite exciting. And we're nowhere near there yet. You can see from this, it's very, very basic at this stage, but the opportunity and the future technology as this builds and grows will allow us to be fully immersed in the way that we interact online. And obviously this has been sped up by the pandemic massively, and now people are taking note of it. I suppose the next kind of step for a metaverse, which is coming from a closed metaverse from Meta, is that Marc Zuckerberg has talked about in 2024, he's going to be releasing some AR glasses. And that is essentially the nail in the coffin in his mind to smartphones, because where we're moving from is having something in your hand to something on your face and that you will see in front of you. And then if we fast forward from that concept to being in a space like the metaverse and being even more immersive in that, we have technology like haptics, which are, again, you can see this if you watch Ready Player One, bodysuits or gloves or things like that, where I could be sat here, Marc is obviously with you lovely lot in Switzerland, we could be sat in the metaverse across a table, but actually I'm here in London, and we could high five and we could feel that touch of high fiving, and we could hug and we could feel each other as we hug. And that's where that true immersion is going to come in. So right now, the metaverse is not just one thing as well. That's really important to point out. It's a number of different worlds. We talked about the sandbox, the Decentraland, which is what you're looking at right now, but also with the Bored Ape Yacht Club bringing out the other side, which is their metaverse. Meta has its own metaverse. And it's really important to kind of know that there are going to be opportunities in all of these. It's just how that all works together. The metaverse is a term that is an umbrella term, and within it, there will be lots of different metaverses, which will appeal to lots of people in lots of different ways. So there might be a more gaming focused metaverse. There might be something that's really focused on healthcare. There might be a world that's really focused on gambling, if you want to look down that road. There's going to be lots and lots of opportunities in lots of different ways, but it's just really important in my mind to make sure that everyone knows that there isn't just one metaverse to rule them all, even though Marc Zuckerberg would love there to be one metaverse to rule them all and that being his, but it doesn't quite exist like that.
I couldn't agree more that there is a bunch of different worlds that will be in one way or another connected, but still different with different experiences. And you also like just maybe touching on what you said before, the NFT. So why are we talking a lot about NFTs when we talk about metaverse, right? It seems strange, but the NFT is basically everything powering at least the open metaverse. So what we see here, everything I wear, Becks wears, everybody wears here are NFTs. The land we stand on is an NFT, right? It's an Ethereum-based ERC 721, I think, or 1172 token. But I guess like one of the two. Normally, they have three major protocols that are being used for the NFTs. And with this, that's why we touch a lot on the NFTs as well, just to bring this across. And I like what you said. I mean, the future, and if we look at the big world population, not everyone will have these expensive, relatively expensive headsets and the computers being able to actually power these things, right? Already now, if you don't have a graphic card, it's getting tricky, right? Sometimes now Decentraland just released for PC their own client, so that makes it way better. We just tested it since yesterday, and it's just the experience just for me like 5x easily, really, really well. But again, we are still early. It feels clunky. It feels at time like totally stupid. But I think that's always the case. If a new technology comes in the beginning, it feels kind of like nothing special, but then eventually you see an exponential development, and in no time, and here so many people and bright people working on it and so much money involved, actually this curve can go up very, very fast. And you mentioned initially also the 5 to 10 year outlook. We already touched a bit on open versus closed metaverse. What is your view there? Like, how is your take?
Well, I think, you described it really well, where if you look at like Microsoft, Google, and Meta, even things like Roblox and Fortnite, those are closed ecosystems that work within themselves, and they create their own worlds, but you can't really interact with other worlds as a result of that. And they are governed by essentially a corporate entity at the top as well. So Mark Zuckerberg is a, I come back to him every time, but he's probably the most prevalent innovator that we want to kind of reference in this, that people will kind of be able to get their heads around. But essentially, I think a closed metaverse, kind of the way you can describe it, it works in the same way as what we're seeing with Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and things like that. If you look at that in terms of land, just generally, when you open an account on Instagram or YouTube or wherever, you're essentially buying rented space, and that is governed by someone like Mark Zuckerberg and his team and whatever he wants to do. And the way that's governed is through algorithms. So they're essentially in control, and they could kind of say, they could pull that metaverse from them whenever they see fit. Now, an open metaverse is a decentralized metaverse where we are in charge, like Decentraland, where we, as the owners of that, make the decisions. So as Mark alluded to, if we wanted to expand the land parcels in Decentraland, we as a collective and community have to agree to do that. Big changes are made by us. So it's not waiting for someone else to make a decision on that. You have a vote and a right. And that isn't, it sounds like that's definitely the more idyllic route to go down. But there are problems there, because we want to experience interoperability, and how do these worlds work with each other, and how can we all interact and be part of all of these decentralized worlds that come together? Or do we have to kind of buy into Meta or something, or a closed metaverse, just because Mark Zuckerberg's got a lot more money than the rest of us and is throwing a lot more money at it? So there's always a bit of a big debate around that, but it does come back to ownership, and who owns what, and how that ownership will be used in the future as well as now. And that, for me, is kind of where I see the big differences between that.
I agree. And I think also the notion, if you look at play to earn games, right? So many people approach me and say, well, look, I've been in Axie Infinity, and this looks like Nintendo 1993 or whatever, like you had the Game Boys, right? Many of us will remember that. And that's true. But at the time, and obviously today, the games are way more sophisticated and everything. But the difficult or the crucial part here is that many people globally actually can make more money playing these games versus their real jobs, which leads to a different comparison. It's not me comparing the latest game that they can't afford on technology that they can't afford because these computers are super expensive and PS4, 5, whatever is super expensive, but they will compare it versus their job. So is it more fun to play these fights in Axie Infinity, which is maybe the biggest play to earn in environment, also a decentral one, or is it more fun to be, I don't know, cleaning somewhere, bringing trash out, whatever it happens to be, or also through the pandemic, obviously many jobs in especially also tourist heavy regions like the Philippines, like Indonesia, where people just lost their jobs because there were no tourists, because all was shut down. And they went and actually started to game and made more money than their parents. Right? And this is just also a shift where I think and why I'm coming to this is the closed and the open metaverse don't need to be at par when it comes to the experience, at least not now, because it's a different comparison too. Right? Open the metaverse from Facebook and the likes, you will always compare to versus my in real life experience. But the open metaverse, you will maybe rather compare to something else, like what could I do instead? Okay, I can earn money here. So I compared maybe to aspects of my job. And then it's a different threshold you need to overcome. And this is why I'm quite actually positive and bullish and also hopeful on the decentral and / open metaverse. You also touched on the Ready Player One experience. For those who have seen it, like they really then over time developed this full body suit. So you would really experience haptics, but also movement and force, and combined with the VR, you get the full immersive experience. And I unfortunately couldn't make it, but there was a Metaverse. I mean, I joined part of the event, but on Sunday, I'm not sure if you have been, there was the possibility, and these vests and gloves are already there, right? You can buy them, and they're not even crazy expensive. You're talking a few $100s, and then you can buy these, and then you have this experience. So we are very much moving there. I wanted to allude on one other aspect, Becks, maybe you can touch on, AR versus VR, right? Many people, especially also parents, approach me and say, well, then my kids will even be more just in front of their computers, gaming now with their headsets on and not having any in real life connections anymore. And my view there is actually exactly with AR and maybe with the headsets coming out. Also, we had Google Glass maybe 10 years ago. They're talking about the next iteration. There are people working on lenses you put in your eye and actually have the augmented reality, the feeling. And I actually see a future where my daughter is out in the field with an AR device and actually plays with her friends globally and goes on a gold chest hunt or slays a dragon or whatever then they will be doing, but they will be out and about. And we have seen this with Pokemon Go, where people were doing suddenly more kilometers. Okay, in the end, they took the car and drove to get the rare Pokemons, but the kids will not be able. So they really were running through the city to get to the points where there were the rare Pokemons, met with other people. And that, for me, is a glimpse at it. Like, what is your take on this, Bex? Like, how you see AR, VR going?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think VR is much more immersive, and I think again, I point to some examples of sort of a good AR example of a metaverse. It's called Super Worlds, which is almost like a photo. I believe that AR is kind of your bridge to kind of really get your head into what is the metaverse, because if you go to something like Decentraland right now and you put on some VR glasses, you're in essentially a very gamified world. AR is that kind of part real, part game feeling. So we saw this initially with our smartphones adopting the idea of AR. And, you know, you could hold your smartphone up and then maybe it would find somewhere, like if anyone's ever used Foursquare, you use a location and it will pop up something about that, some information about somewhere you're walking through. We take that and we build it into a metaverse kind of world. Super Worlds is the best example of this, where essentially you get a photographic look of, say, San Francisco, and you find a restaurant in San Francisco that you're thinking of going to. And you take whatever AR device, and it could be as simple as a phone, over that particular metaverse restaurant there. And it could be a real restaurant in real life. And someone may have left some reviews, or they may have said what they think are the best, pieces of food on the menu or things like that. And that will pop up for you as part of that metaverse world, but yet it will still look incredibly real, photographic real. But then when, you know, what we're all really familiar with VR is the idea of that full immersion, that almost 4D kind of feel. So you put your glasses on and you're in it. You look around and everywhere you see is this gamified different world. And I've been in amazing VR experiences, one at Mobile World Congress where Marc and I actually met, where I was put in a car and taken around with a VR headset on. And whilst that car drove round, it actually negated some issues that I found with VR before, which is motion sickness. Because as you're driving and as you're going through your world in real life, the bumps and the jumps in the road and things like that actually work with the VR headset, so you don't feel like you're getting any motion sickness. Whereas before that, I had been on a VR headset on a Vincent van Gogh immersive art tour, and it moved me whilst I was stationary in the seat and I felt really sick. So there are tweaks and changes that they're doing with VR, but I do see the differences as kind of part immersion with AR moving into much more immersive elements with VR. So virtual reality versus augmented reality.
And I love that. And also when we see, when we look at the experience today, it's very much linked to our real world. So what we know, right? So theoretically in Decentraland, we could be flying, but today we are not flying because it needs this intermittent step of, okay, I'm somebody else moving in a different world. And first I need to get acquainted with it, right? So I need to find bring my head around these things, right? And in the future, I think it will be a no-brainer to also allow flying and basically escape the limitations we have in the real world. And every kid, me dreaming forever, possibility to be flying and seeing, placing, obviously teleporting already possible, right? Something we can, or they think we can handle. So I can move here, just put go to somewhere else and jump across the entire map without the need to really travel there. Yeah, so I would say we leave the metaverse for now. Maybe Lucas, if you stop sharing, and we come back to basically the full view on ourselves here. Perfect. Thanks a lot for sharing, and cool that it worked. And thanks for Lucas for working this tirelessly with our developers actually from India. And also this is obviously a remote work situation where we made this possible, and very fast actually brought this stage up, which I think looks quite cool for the time we actually put into it. Let us maybe go into the next part, which I titled "Why Care." So why, we touched a little bit on it, but why should people care? What excites you so much? And you already touched on many elements, but why should people pay attention? Why is this bigger than just more games?
Well, I'll take it back to NFTs and actually what I mentioned when it came to why I got into NFTs. And I talked about initially getting into stocks and shares and trying to learn that and feeling very siloed in that. Community is one of the big things that I think has really changed the way that people view Web3 and what really strikes a lot of people. The biggest comparison I can put is if I was investing in a stock and share in Microsoft, I can't call up Bill Gates and say, hey, Bill, what's on your roadmap for the next 6 months? Why should I invest in you? But with NFTs and the metaverse and everything like that, you can have that access to founders and creators and the community sentiment behind it. And you can actually speak to those founders and say, what is happening in the next 6 months? Why is it that I should buy into your project? And that access is what really changed things for me, because it helped me understand things. This is going way beyond a picture of a cartoon ape, by the way. This is like taking things to another level of going, these projects, these NFT projects, or the metaverse land parcels that you are buying, these are businesses, and these are the opportunities for you essentially to be a shareholder of a business. And the founders of those particular projects have a responsibility to deliver. Now, from NFTs, that responsibility is something called utility. And that can be anything from merchandise to networking, to exclusive events, to like VCon, for instance, Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, that's the big pull of his particular NFT. And airdrops of other valuable NFTs and things like that can make you more residual income. That is the opportunity on a very basic level for NFTs. The opportunity within the metaverse is like what the opportunity of buying land in the real world is. It's just a digital version of that. So, you know, for that, it's kind of, you could buy a piece of land and you can build on that land, and you could build office blocks on that land, and you could rent out those office blocks on that land. And if they're rented out for the next 10 years, there's an income that you can make from that. You can create your business in the metaverse, which is what my business is planning on doing. You can just take that opportunity of your digital twin and apply it to that. So for me, it's the big opportunity, and the big thing that I think is really, exciting is the fact that it is community led and it is accessible to all. And you as an individual, whether or not you have tons of tech experience or no tech experience, as long as you're willing to learn, you have the opportunity to thrive and grow in this space. And we see it in the NFT community, where lots of people who have, they're working a general 9 to 5, but have flipped some NFTs and actually changed their lives. It's not going to happen overnight, but it is something that if you start understanding the space and you see the opportunity for investment, for building, for brands, for creating your own business, it's going to be massive for you. So that's what really excites me, and that's what gets me up in the morning, and sharing those stories, interviewing those creators, and inspiring people to kind of really understand and get their heads around things are really, really important when it comes to this space for me.
You touched again, like we can see again, NFTs is really the bridge to it. It's what you own. And that's why we touch on it again and again and again. Even though we talk metaverse, we almost talk more NFTs, right? And we, for those who haven't been here in the last Lunch and Learn, we had a session on NFTs. So if you didn't see that, click on the link above. It will not be like this. But obviously, have a look. It's recorded. Reach out to us if you don't see the recording there as well. And you touched again on the digital economy and what will happen there and how it's just mirroring what we see in real life. When you think of the jobs, and you touched on a few, but if we go a little bit crazy, and it's always hard to predict the future, but what kind of jobs do you foresee to pop up next in the metaverse?
Well, we're already seeing, if you're in fashion, a massive opportunity to create digital wearables. If you're a jewelry designer, there are already fantastic teams like Weave3 and Catharsis who are creating digital digital wearables for avatars in the space, but also as an NFT. If you are I think one thing that people will really be able to get their heads around is real estate, right? If you work in real estate and you're thinking, what can I do in the digital space? It works in it almost exactly the same way. You just have to understand that it's digital rather than in real life. You can sell the land that you purchased. You can learn how to build on this land. There are already digital architects, voxel architects who are working with Sandbox and Decentraland to provide that service to help people like myself or Mark who have parcels of land and don't know how to build it ourselves. We don't know coding. So there will be people like that can work in that space. Now, when you build that land, what you're going to do if you want to design it, you want to build yourself a nice house in the metaverse. How do you design that house? We'll need interior designers. We'll need stylists within that space. The opportunities are endless in that respect. You just have to kind of think about your knowledge within the real world and how you can apply it to the digital world. Mortgage brokers, how will you be able to apply mortgages if everything gets turned into an NFT? Work with it rather than working against it. The biggest pushback that I have is from art gallery owners who are like, there will always be room for curation. But actually, the interesting thing is that a lot of artists in the NFT space are taking their opportunity to sell and cutting out the middleman. So it's an interesting one where art galleries are kind of going, well, they're not going to wipe us out. So how can we maximize on this? So they create art galleries in the metaverse. So you can go from wherever you are in the world to go and find a Damien Hirst and to see it up front and to find out more about it so they can still sell digital versions of great art. It really interestingly, I was out with a business coach yesterday and she was saying to me, I think I might set up a coaching office in the metaverse. And I was like, this is amazing, do it. And she was like, because I have a global clientele and Zoom doesn't really cut it for me. If I can sit in the metaverse and sit at a table and my client in Australia can sit at that table opposite me and I can see their body language, I can see how they're moving and see how they're feeling beyond just what I see on a screen, that's going to change the game for me and how I treat my clients. Healthcare as well. I was on a stage in Barcelona interviewing some AI specialists about what the metaverse will do for healthcare and education in healthcare, surgeons teaching future surgeons how to do particular surgeries, no matter where they are in the world, will be able to sit around a table together in the metaverse to see the intricacies of what that top surgeon is doing. If the metaverse existed in its purest form today, I would be able to be sat in the room alongside each and every one of you that are there with Mark and feel like I'm part of this conversation instead of being part of this screen. So that's where we're kind of seeing how from a business, from a social, from a team aspect, things are really, really going to change. But right now, like I say, we're really, really early. And it's just about thinking about what it is that you can do and how you can apply what you do right now to what those skills to what we can do in the future.
for touching on so many areas. I think one element, obviously, when you talked about mortgages and bringing NFTs as a collateral, right? We are back in DeFi space, so decentralized finance, which obviously exists outside of the metaverse, but will have applicances in the metaverse. So a super easy one is really, I can't afford the land, but I want to build, or I don't want, so I rent. On all these contracts being then done on smart contracts and coded instead of contracts. This will change a lot as well. I think this is 100% happening already there. What I also find interesting, I think UPS announced that they are filing a patent for something in the metaverse. And for me, I can totally see that you gift something wrapped, an NFT wrapped. You don't see from the outside what is inside. It's actually sent to your house or given to you at the party or whatever. And then you really unwrap and only afterwards see what's in it. So even with businesses that you would say, why would I ever want a parcel delivered in the metaverse? They have an edge, right? And I very much like how you approach it with, what are my skills in the real life, in the real world, and how can I transfer that skill and think about creative ways on new businesses and how to apply my knowledge and maybe combine it with some new knowledge, but how can I and then also do something in the metaverse. What is also interesting, and talking about NFTs, but like if you issue an NFT, it's very different from when you create just a normal piece of art, and also different to when you issue shares. What do I mean? When you have NFTs on the secondary marketplaces, you can define how much cut you will get in every sale. So basically, if you do something that works, and for example, we have seen the Bored Ape Yacht Club, we have seen the Mutants and others, but also many, many others, World of Women, whatever it happens to be. But all these will have an infinite stream of revenues from their secondary market sales, right? And you can set how much you will get. So you can set from 0 to, normally they limit it to 10%. But imagine the prices go up, you still benefit in that. And it also changes very much the game on what your interests are as an artist. You want a thriving economy. You want a thriving market. You want your art to actually do well, be sold for higher and higher prices. So your 5, 7, 8% cut actually is an income stream that is becoming super, super significant. And this changes how long-term also the artists and the collections need to think. As an additional point. And maybe just the last one, you touched on it initially, and I also saw on your YouTube that you spent 25,000 on, for example, your mutant ape. You call it yourself, like, why spend 25,000 on a JPEG? Then you also in another video say totally you spent like maybe $50,000. So that's a month or so ago. So maybe that's 80,000 now. But why are you spending so much money on something? Like people say a JPEG, right? Why are you doing that?
Because I'm bullish. Because actually I see, and I go back to this point about utility, there is so much more to a JPEG than a JPEG. People who don't understand or aren't educated in this space will see it initially as it's just a cartoon ape. But once you've learned about what the opportunity of this access token or digital certificate of authenticity is within the NFT space, you'll understand the further value. And don't get me wrong, and I've seen some comments on the chat box here, 99% of NFTs will go to zero. So it is a risk. And I would always say, only spend what you're willing to learn. And my motto is, and this is kind of me being in the space for a year, you burn, you learn, right? And when Ethereum was lower, I made some dud purchases. I learned from that. And it was, I lost money as much as I've made money. But if you make good strategic investments, which is exactly the same as any investment in any area that you're wanting to invest in, you do your research, you find a good team behind it, you make sure that they're here for the long run and that they kind of prove themselves and that they have something that you want to buy into and that you believe in. So the Mutant Ape Yacht Club is the secondary collection of the Bored Ape Yacht Club. I wish I wish I had understood about NFTs early enough to have bought a Bored Ape Yacht Club, because I would be able to sit on an asset that maybe I would have paid $200 for back in April last year, that is now worth a minimum of $200,000. However, I'm very happy with my mutant. I probably spent around $25,000 on that mutant initially, but that is currently, as of yesterday, so it was 5.5 ETH when I bought it. It's today worth 30.9 ETH. Which is quite incredible, but I will never sell it. It's my access to a lot of other things that particular community can offer me, and that's the bigger play for me. So to give you an example of that, they dropped a cryptocurrency called ApeCoin to all of their Bored Ape Yacht Club and Mutant Ape Yacht Club holders, and it was kind of done in increments. So if you owned a Genesis Bored Ape Yacht Club, one of the benefits of being a loyal holder of that NFT is that you will get 10,000 ApeCoin. And then if you own a Mutant Ape, you'll get 2,500 ApeCoin. So it's kind of, the value is slightly different. But that ApeCoin of having 2,500 of that today, I checked it this morning, is worth £30,000 in itself. So that, just by holding on to that NFT, I have made through the cryptocurrency that the founders have given back to the loyal holders of that, £30,000, which is more than I spent on the original NFT. So it's paid for itself. Not everyone can buy into that, and it took me a long time to get the money together to even buy that in the first place before things really took off. But it was a game of strategy and understanding and research. And essentially what it means is that you might get lucky. You might find an early NFT project that you can mint, which means it's launching, and you can get in there for a couple of $100s. There are so many in the market now, and there are so many problems because it's an unregulated space that we have to kind of be aware of, with scams and something called rug pulls, where there's no accountability and people can literally walk away with all the money. But if you are educating yourself, you'll know how to protect yourself, and you'll know how to really make much more strategic decisions. And I do not see that as any different to investing in any other particular industry. It's just one that I choose to enjoy a lot more because I can get a lot more information, not just from the founders, but from community sentiment as well. So that's why I care, and that's why I'm pretty bullish on it as well.
For sharing that. And I think you mentioned and touched also on how early these projects are, and that you lost money, and everyone engaging will tell you these stories. They invested in something, got rug pulled, so basically founders running away with the money. They deplete, for like in the old days it was liquidity pool, they would just deplete and run away. Sometimes they get hacked, sometimes something works as intended but then is still abused because it's in code to do something that is not intended. Just had, I think a week back, 80 million not a hack, they just used the system which worked as intended. No, it worked as coded, obviously not as intended, because intention would have not been that they can run away with money. But basically they just did an attack and owned through a flash loan. They owned 51% of all the tokens with that in the same transaction, got the loan, X hundred millions, got the vote in to vote on something, donation to an address. They voted yes, all in the same transaction. And when basically they repaid the loan in the same transaction, had the money on their wallet, and basically then started to run away with it, with all the different tools that allows you to cover up your traces. Very much so. But the comparison is very much also, and we are here in the F10 in a startup space, right? It's with early stage startups, it's also normally the odds are against you, also 80%, maybe more, depending on what sector and the location and team will fail. And the same is happening in the NFT, in the metaverse, in the digital space. Right? So don't expect everything just to go up. And I think we then also in the end should touch on some of the challenges. Also, you mentioned that it will not be easy to get for everyone now a Bored Ape, right? The Bored Ape, I think yesterday was the cheapest one you could find on the market, was close to $330,000 for one JPEG. So obviously what is happening now is people forming groups and kind of their community. From a community, they form a company a DAO, a digital autonomous organization, put money together, and with that have a shared ownership of something like land, something like a Bored Ape, a Mutant Ape, or other expensive NFTs that are not affordable by themselves. And what we see here, maybe just to touch on this real quick, is in the old days, you would have people coming together and then build a community. Today, it's really flipped, at least in the Web3 space, is you build a community and then afterwards build the company. So the DAO is basically supported and run and organized by the community. I think we said 90 minutes, no? Yes, we do. Right. So we're talking too much. Thanks for the sign. Maybe to jump into the next chapter real quick, and then we go into Q&A. Maybe we keep it a little bit shorter. But where should people start? Like, how can, like, now maybe some here have never had an experience in the metaverse, never bought an NFT. How should people get started? Obviously, other than watching your YouTube channels, but also including watching your YouTube channel.
Yeah, I was going to say you should just jump onto my YouTube channel and actually watch that video about why I spent £25,000 on $1,000 on a JPEG, because that actually breaks down what an NFT is in a really simple form. So if you want to start there and really get your head around an NFT, that is a good one. But I would say that I spent 2 or 3 months not buying any NFTs, but just immersing myself in Twitter and understanding what that is. So your main hubs for understanding NFTs are Twitter. And then also, once you kind of get your head around that, is Discord. So you kind of level up when you go into Discord, because you find a particular project that you have an affinity with and that you like, and you want to find out more about it. And then you set up a Discord and you go into that community hub on Discord and you speak to the community directly. And that, for me, is a really simple way of doing that. But beyond that, you need to understand the basics of buying cryptocurrency and setting up a MetaMask wallet. There are other wallets that you can purchase, but the most interoperable, I should say, is your MetaMask wallet, and that's what's most widely used. And that can be quite daunting for a lot of people. The concept of cryptocurrency can be a really daunting notion. And I am not a fan of crypto. I'm not someone who's got bags of cryptocurrency somewhere. I use that as a means to buy into NFTs. And someone could ask me a lot about crypto and I don't know a huge amount. I don't know the technicalities of it or whatever. I just follow Ethereum because that's your main blockchain that you're buying and selling off of. And I kind of just know when it goes up, when it goes down, how much I've got in my wallet. So that would be the next thing that I would say is understand how to set that up. And it is super simple to do. And if you have like a Mac or something like that, or Google Chrome, you'll have your wallet will sit on your Google Chrome sort of toolbar at the top as well, so you can always access it. The third thing I'd say is get a ledger, which is a cold wallet to protect your assets. And that would be the next thing, because this is, as I said before, it's an unregulated space. It is seen as the digital wild, wild west, where there are lots of people who are gunslinging left, right, and center, wanting to take your money, and can do it in a really simple way if you are uneducated. So don't click on any links. Don't trust anyone on your DMs. Don't ever open up your Discord DMs to anyone. And if you're unsure, ask someone who's trusted within the space. And then I would just say a ledger is essentially a cold wallet, which takes most of your private details. They're called private keys when you set up your MetaMask wallet, and takes that offline, so that every time you transact, you have to go through a process which is essentially offline to make sure that you're definitely doing it in the right way, and so that you don't get scammed. And the most important thing around that is that when you set up a MetaMask wallet, you'll get given a 12-word seed phrase. You guard this with your life. You do not put it on your computer or anything. You write it on a piece of paper, or you etch it in metal so it's fireproof, and you never tell anyone what those 12 words are, because if you let go of them, you will lose everything and there is no way of recovering it. So those are my kind of basic steps for getting into NFTs.
Thank you. I think start with the video is definitely smart. Start playing and listening, right? Listen before you buy. I think everyone, including you also, everyone I talked to, they heard about NFTs, didn't get it, heard again, didn't get it, heard again, and then kind of there must be something, and dug deeper, and then took some time, and then finally bought. And in hindsight, always say what you just said. Well, I got to know it in March 2021. In April, the apes dropped for 200 a piece. Why should I? Why didn't I? Right. So we'll always have that. Expect that as part of your journey. Kind of afterwards, you're smarter. And why didn't I? It's fine. You don't have to, and you will miss out on some things, and that's fine. And I think it's part of the process you need to go through. I like that you said understand the basics of crypto as well, because it is still not easy. I actually onboarded a mentor of mine from Silicon Valley. He is 67, but super tech savvy and teaches me new tools all the time. And we took 1 hour to actually get him his first NFT. He didn't have Coinbase. He didn't have anything to start with. So we really did have to do everything. But it almost took us an hour. Obviously, we took notes, and he wanted to do it the proper way. What are the 8 steps that we need to follow? And then. So we didn't do the fastest route, but it takes time. So don't expect it to be done in 2 minutes and just be up and running. And on the ledger piece, I fully agree. But also in the beginning, don't mind too much. Maybe you just have a wallet to play around, put very little money there, and just click around. Make it easy. Clicking and transacting with the ledger is an additional hurdle. It's just making it more cumbersome. So have a play wallet first, I would say. And then as a second step is definitely when you put in serious money, look into the ledger, but also be mindful here. Sometimes it's safer to have something stored in a password manager rather than in your socks. Right, because that's kind of the people tell you to note down these 12 words. When these 12 words are gone, it's really gone, right? And password manager needs to be hacked, and at least you will have access if your computer breaks down or whatever. Like a lot of things can happen, but just be very, very mindful there. And what you touched on, don't click on links. The direct messages in Discord, in Twitter, there's normally scam. If it's too good to be true, it's scam. If you thought, hey, this minting is later, it's scam. If you think, hey, why is this paying me 2 times market? It's scam. It's just like, as in real life, you get the emails and a lot is phishing. They want to get access to your stuff. Nothing has changed. It's just in a new dimension now, and everything, hackers are there because it's super, super lucrative. And your tip also on asking people, really do it. Even post it in a Discord channel that where you are in a community. People want to help. It's a very, very helpful community, still early. That's why also people will onboard you. And sometimes some of these trusted people will give you a good deal just because they want to get you into space, and they will maybe give you something for free. I mean, we have the stories where Andreessen Horowitz, I think it was Ben at the time, he gave 5 Bitcoins to everyone who was interested for free because it was so cumbersome to buy them that he just said, look, whatever, give me your wallet, I just send you 5 Bitcoins so you get started. At the time, that was cents, right? So you will have people that just want to get people in. People with hundreds of millions, maybe billions at some time, are active as well. So I want to maybe just close off with some of the challenges, right? You talked about rug pull. We touched on education, and then we just go into Q&A. I'll actually make it real quick, like just 1-2 sentences. What would you say on this challenges part?
Challenges, regulation. I don't know how much regulation we'll need, but there needs to be something to allow people to be accountable. There still isn't enough education in the space, and that needs to change. And there needs to be a growing level of trust within the space, and that's going to take time. As with any emerging space, these are always the problems that we're going to face. But we'll get there. We will get there.
Super fast on challenges, but let's focus on the positive and the learning and the exploring. We should take questions. Maybe while we get people ready in the room, do we have something online that is pressing? Do you want to come closer to a microphone? You actually brought it forward. What's the best advice you would give to start investing in NFTs? I think we touched quite a bit on it. Immerse in Twitter, go into the Discord channels of the projects you like. listen, talk, ask all the questions, read their white paper, understand what they're doing. Also understand it's early, so it's what you will not be getting the same information as you would if you buy Nestle shares. You will get the same information as if you would invest in an early stage startup. A lot of the stuff they just don't know. They have numbers going through the roof, but everybody knows it will not happen. So that's also true with their roadmaps. They will, if it's just, well, we'll drop merch and then we'll have a metaverse. Well, do you have the team? Do you have the people? Do you actually have people to develop the metaverse? Because that's taking a lot of effort. But that's maybe the quick answer to that. But I think, Becks, you already touched quite a bit on it as well.
Yeah, I'd just say, Twitter Spaces are a great place to really hear from the founders, understand what they're talking about, and asking the questions. Going back to what I said, like, you can't pick up the phone to Bill Gates. This is the way through audio and Twitter Spaces that you can hear and speak to founders as part of a big community group. So if you want to find out more about a project, they should run an AMA and ask me anything. That should be what they'll be doing in the lead up to their mints.
Something? Yes, please.
My name is Ankit Garg. I am setting up a company builder and an early stage fund for things like Metaverse here. And to your point regarding the early stage VC investing, what would you say to the investors as your message in Switzerland, where the investments are very conservative, where money needs to be seen first before you would invest, or some kind of proof of concept in place? And for these topics like Metaverse, I think everything is really 5 to 10 years ahead of time. And if you look at the investments in Switzerland, out of $3 billion in VC investments in last year, less than 100 million was for Metaverse, or I would say, even negligible. So what do you have to say to the investors in Switzerland to push this topic of Metaverse?
So the question was, for those online, and maybe next time we need to get people closer to the mic, just that I don't need to repeat too long questions. But what I see for investors investing in the Metaverse, that is especially in Switzerland, it's still just a small portion of the money going into Metaverse projects. I think we'll have new metrics we'll actually look at. And I would look at more, what is the community? What is the strength of the community? How did they get their community together? Well, they might have 30,000 people in Discord, but they did some crazy incentives to actually bring other people in or to join. So you need to understand, okay, one is the number, but how did they build the community? How did they get the people in? I think it's a different, a new one that you didn't see so much in the past. You will more look, what is the product? What is the idea? What is the founders? Obviously the team also here is super key. And I think we'll see NFTs as a means to actually raise money in the future, accompanying crowdfunding initiatives. And with that, obviously also going into regulatory spaces of securities, which will happen and people will need to adhere to. But that would be my quick take. Like, look at the community, especially when it's B2C, and B2B, it's maybe even tougher to look at. So anything you would want to add on that, Becks?
I would just say that it's all about the right investor. Okay. So as with anything, but an investor that's got their open-mindedness to what the future will bring within this space, but not be bogged down by the traditional protocols of what you would traditionally need from an investing model, are really, really important. So it's about finding those futurist thinkers that kind of understand the concept, because you can prove to them of how many people have bought land, how many people have already invested in land, and you can show those stats. And so beyond that, I would just say, if they're doing it, here's where the opportunity is and why, and you can lay that out, but be very clear to an investor that the rules aren't written yet. And that's where the opportunity is the fact that they have a massive opportunity because there isn't a dedicated roadmap for the metaverse yet. It is what we as a community will make it. And someone just needs to have that clear mind to be able to see that.
Can you maybe quickly come towards this mic? Maybe just if you ask.
Yeah.
into this one.
As we are looking into teenage banking, should I try to buy some land now already so I'm able to have a virtual agency at some point?
Buy land now question. Bex, you want to have a first go?
I'm biased, but yeah, go ahead. Like, go and get it. I don't think, everything is a risk. This isn't financial advice, but I would say, I am someone who puts my money where my mouth is. And I think, I do see that there is a future in this. I do not see it as a bubble. I see it as an opportunity, again, for the long run. And you might have to sit on this as a 10-year investment, but that could be a very profitable 10-year investment. Think about those 10-year investments you may have made when Bitcoin came out, and this is kind of the same space as to where we're at now with all of this. So yeah, go for it. Not financial advice.
Add on, understand really what you want to do with the land. Maybe there is also different ways to get it. You can rent land as well as an alternative. You can start by asking somebody who has land and maybe does nothing with it. Also, if you are in those communities of Decentraland on the Discord channels, you will have people who have land and there's nothing on it. And maybe if you get friends with them, they just let you deploy whatever to play a bit around. Right? Have a plan. I think it's also question, where will you buy land? I think this is coming back to real estate in a bigger sense, like which continent should I buy, which metaverse should I buy, and then locally, where do I need to be? If I have a fashion brand, it makes sense to be near the fashion center or a shopping mall. If I have another game, I want to maybe be near Atari. If I. So it's not as easy yes no question, but I like how obviously Becks is super bullish on it, and I'm trying to be the cautious here a little bit. But have a plan. Debbie.
Come to the front. Thanks a lot. It was very insightful. So do any of you have, we obviously talked a lot about community. What are the opportunities for individuals, businesses? We mentioned community. The whole thing is obviously in a whole different scope when it comes to what is the future economy and how do we live together as a society, as a community, when everything shifts to the metaverse. And I think it's the ultimate capitalism also in a way, when every item has a price tag and so on. Any tips on reflecting this in a bigger picture? Any books, any speakers? Is this already happening that people will kind of, also from a philosophical point of view, kind of imagine or reimagine that world and think about that also in those metrics?
I think, yeah, thanks a lot for the question. And I think some of the things you will be able to read will actually be very early things. Like if you look at Snow Crash and if you look at also Ready Player One, what you see there is nothing else than what likely will pan out a little bit over the next few years. Generally, if you want something on what is happening just now, I wouldn't turn to books, but really to Twitter Spaces, to Twitter threads. Many people are really putting a lot of thought and time into this. Like go where the noise is. Yeah, go where the current discussions is, because the books will not be written fast enough to encompass what is currently happening. So you might well go to the older books and really look at the stuff that has been written without this hype. Right? There was no hype around it, so people had really time to think and took time to think. Any additions, Bex?
All I would say is that we need to be aware that there isn't going to be one or the other. There isn't going to be the metaverse and the real world are never working together. It's going to be this like gray area that works in tandem with each other. So don't think that we have to drop everything to move over to that space. But to your point, Mark, like everything here is so fast moving. If you take 24 hours off in the NFT or the metaverse space, you feel like you've lost a lifetime. So you're absolutely right to say that the best place to get your most up-to-date information will be Twitter or LinkedIn or Twitter Spaces to get in even more immersed conversation. But yeah, 100% agree.
Maybe I just look at the chat. I saw here one just coming up about a real bear market for the NFT space, which is likely to occur at some point in coming years. Yes, hopefully. I want to buy a cheap ape, but No, but generally, I think we will have these cycles. It also here again, like the real economy, what we have seen the thousands of years in real life is not a bad indicator what we will see there. We had boom and dust, we had the dot-com bubble, we had other bubbles busting, and this will be the same here. I think what we just have is to keep in mind is because we are still so early and just a few percentage of global wealth is allocated to this space, I can imagine that there will be some waves, but the trend generally will be up, right? So far today, there is only a very small window that you would have needed to buy Bitcoin that you are currently sitting at the loss, right? Even with the 40,000 something price today, it's a few months only in the more than 10 years of history, 14 years of history of Bitcoin, where you could have bought just a few months would actually put you in a negative situation here. And this is when it goes up, right? If this is a mega trend, and if we really see this as a new technology, decentral, and if it's powered by NFTs, then I think we'll see an overall trend up. Also here, no financial advice, but obviously we'll see the waves. And yes, I can imagine the apes will get cheaper, but it's unclear if they get cheaper from 10 million to 5 million or from 300,000 where they are to 100,000. It's just not clear. And I think that's why I would, like, if you want to get in, obviously diversify. Don't spend anything you can't afford to lose. Everything. Don't go into stuff that you don't understand, where you are, this doesn't make any sense. Then maybe it's not making sense, right? Look at the team, talk to the people you know, and have experience in the space. What is your take on the NFT bear market?
We've had some bear market cycles. We had some, I think, just after Christmas, and everyone was a bit worried and panicked, and people panic sold, and people who knew that this was going to be okay thrived from that, and like you say, like bought the cheap apes. But I would say the biggest advice as well would be do not FOMO into a project, fear of missing out. That's not the way to do it in this space, and you will not prosper if you just jump on board the hype bandwagon. And what we're seeing in the space at the moment is not just we're kind of I wouldn't say it's a bear market, but it's certainly not what it was in August, September time where everything was going up. It's just quite placid at the moment. So that means for me, you have time to do research. I haven't bought an NFT for a good couple of months, I don't think, because I'm waiting, and my buying strategy's changed. I spend more money on blue chips and don't really buy newer projects because it's harder to decipher where the good solid long-term roadmaps are and things like that. But it is now where you have that opportunity to immerse yourself, to learn, and also to ask the questions that you have about that space. So don't be afraid of a quieter market, which is what we're in at the moment.
And I'm also looking at the time here, and I would like to just close off with something that you are becoming used to. Is there will be an NFT from F10. So if you liked what you saw and you want to get another NFT, it's actually on the Polygon chain, so it's in MetaMask as well. Talking interoperability, just send me an email, send Joel an email, anyone in the team. You will happy to just drop it to your wallet. And I would like to take the opportunity again to thank you, Becks, very much for joining us today. Also, we'll have the next one scheduled already. Go check it out. We stay a little bit in the theme. It's about crypto, and maybe it's a good first step then also to understand what you need to understand to then think NFTs and think also Metaverse. Thanks a lot, Becks, for being part of this. It was great fun. I could do this forever, but I'm conscious of people's time. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining in person, especially making it out here. Very much appreciated. And everyone online also, especially dialing in from difficult time zones and difficult places. Thanks a lot for making it, and see you soon.